from PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for the podcaster who loves pop music, but I try not to share my love of pop music too much with you, because I'm, here to put you to sleep, trying not to get caught in the hook. But by the time you hear this, a reference will be as dated as my watermelon sugar references. And, then I'll be going back to whatever, 2016, 2019, and saying, I'll be like riding into your sleep like a dark horse of dreamland and singing in the shower because it's time for Sleep With Me. And if you're confused, you're in the right place. The podcast to put you to sleep. Hey, everybody, Scoots. It's time to talk about tonight's sponsor, Helix, and this is going to be an interactive experience or indirect interactive. So you're going to go to helixsleep.com/sleep. That's where I'm going now because I'm trying to pick out a new mattress. I moved. I couldn't bring my Helix with me. I miss it so much. So I'm going to take the sleep quiz. And I'm looking for a queen size. And, first thing you do is pick your sleep position. I sleep mostly on my stomach, a little bit on my side. I do it, I guess, but I'm tossing and turning most nights. So I'm going to pick toss and turn. My preference has changed over the last, traveling. I think I do prefer a firm feel. So I'm going to pick firm feel. Do I ever wake up with back pain? Sometimes I do. So I'm going to pick sometimes. And how often do you sleep hot? Every night is when I sleep hot. I got to stay cool. And so the mattress I got matched with was the Helix Twilight. It's a firm feel, 2-edge support, breathable cover for side sleepers. And I do think I want it with the Glaciotex cool cover and cool force layer. So I'm going to pick out some more details here in a little bit before I get it. But that's how easy it is to find the mattress that suits you and your needs, right? I want the mattress that fits my needs. Doesn't mean it's going to be the best mattress for you. That's what's amazing about Helix and their quiz. You just take the quiz. You see if it fits your needs. You take it with your partner. You pick the mattress you get matched with. And then it comes straight to your door, shipped free of charge, and you just set it up, and you're good to go. I mean, I cannot wait to get back into a Helix mattress. So let me know, take the quiz, let me know what mattress you get matched with, and then Helix always has great deals for our listeners, so check it out. Go to helixsleep.com/sleep to see the latest offers for Sleep With Me listeners. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for current offers. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody, Scoots here. And if you've been listening to Sleep With Me for longer than a year, you probably know me pretty well. You probably develop preferences about the show, favorites. Maybe you build your own playlists in your podcast app. Maybe you've kind of, I'm a part of your life. I'm a part of your routine. And I'm hoping if you've been listening over a year, this is the time you're listening to me and hearing me right now. And you're not changing your mind about supporting the show, but realizing, hey, I have been listening. Holy cow, how have I not supported this podcast? How have I not at least tested out Sleep With Me Plus? Because it's built with long-term listeners in mind. If you've never supported the show or you stopped and you're thinking about coming back, maybe like Timothy said, Scoots, I'm a full-time caregiver and, person I care for, and I discovered the podcast, and we love listening to the ad-free content. Or John that said, I see and feel how much you love doing this podcast as your vocation. I'm going to help do my part to keep that a reality. So can you take part in this too? Now, if you decided you're not going to support the show or you're not in a position, you could still root with me. This is like the closest thing to Sleep With Me sports. We're rooting that there is someone listening. Maybe it's you. Maybe can you feel all those other listeners rooting for you? Or are you doing the rooting and saying, yeah, I've been listening 4 years. I've been listening 2 years. It is time for me to support the show. Well, we're rooting for you. And I hope you're hearing me. I hope you're listening. And if you're not the person I'm talking to, I hope you're rooting with me that person is hearing me. Because we really could use your support. And you could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And here's the thing. There's a 7-day trial, so you could cancel after 6 days if it doesn't meet your expectations. But if you've been listening over a year, I need you to either root for that person Or maybe you are that person that's going to support the show right now at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Oh, Mystery Bart. A lot of people help out on this show. Who are they?
Chris Posty Poster Son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes too. Carl W. the Legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound or on the website. I am the Mystery Bart. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support your scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Hannah like banana. Leah does the transcript.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. And don't forget, the most comfortable way to listen to Sleep With Me is with sleep phones. You can get sleep phones at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep phones and use Sleep With Me for $5 off at checkout. Sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep phones. Use Sleep With Me at checkout. What do you say we get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights and press play. I'm going to do the rest, or all you could do. It's optional. And it's also optional. Listening to me is optional. Understanding me, definitely. I don't know. It's optional. But I was trying to think of another word for it. Because you say, well, it's not quite optional and something. But what I propose to do is I'm going to send my voice. Turn out the lights and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. Whether that's thoughts. You think if I've done this a thousand times, but thoughts of so things on your mind that you're thinking about, past, present, or future. Thoughts, feelings. It could be anything you're experiencing emotionally. So thoughts, feelings, physical sensations. Send changes, which that could be another one. Send change, like sensations and changes, or changes caused by sensations, or sensations caused by changes. Whatever, like within, or also could be changes in schedule. These could be sensations caused by changes too, like the schedule, routine, outdoor, you see, I got that buzzing out there. It's got a sensation going inside me now. And you say, when did that buzzing start? Well, Earl, it's been going as long as I can remember. I said, well, I just noticed it. What is it? And you say, I don't know. It's a gentle buzzing. Oh, I feel like I was hearing a whirring. And you say, okay, are you back asleep again? Oh, okay, she is. I better get back to the sleep podcast. Okay, so whatever's keeping you awake, I'd like to take your mind off of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth this safe place. I'm going to pat it. I'm going to rub it down. I guess you could picture me, and this is, again, another dated reference because I record the shows ahead of time. Like that popular tag team commercial. With the scooping, and you could picture me dancing in a comfortable, joyous way, like in that TV commercial, or not. You could just say, well, no. Hopefully you feel like I'm in like you say, well, there's a lot of different kinds of joy, Scoots. And I say, yeah, I'm like I'm like a deflated balloon that was at a great birthday party. Here's an analogy I've never made for the podcast before, but it's pretty apt because you say, okay, Scoots, give me accurate brand new made up analogy about the podcast. And I say, well, I just did. You want me to do that? Can I go back to that one? Oh yeah, no, I thought you were. Sorry, I'm late. I was late. Sorry, I'm your setup person, Scoots. Thanks. Yeah, you know when a lot of people don't know this, but birthday balloons and balloons in general, they do have some sentience. Occasionally, the sentient balloon. I mean, we've all seen that one thing. At least in the 80s, they made us watch it. I don't even remember. You know, there's like all those songs about red balloons in English and other languages. But then there was a movie we used to watch every year in school, or at least it felt like with a boy in a red balloon. But I feel like that movie does it like at least I don't have joy associated with it. And that might be my own issue. And I mean, those issues, I've had a few. But I'm talking about balloons, sentient balloons from birthday parties, particularly joyous children's birthday parties. Those are joyous balloons. Also, come on down to joyous balloons. Our balloons cost 4 times as much because they're filled with joy. Joyous balloons. You can find us at Joyous Balloons. Whatever website. I wish I purchased it before I brought this up. Joyous Balloons. Our balloons are full of joy. Balloons are not actually full of, they are, there's no way to disprove our statement that they're full of joy. All balloons have one breath of a person who's from a joyous person, and then the rest are helium. Joyous balloons. Balloons full of joy. Joyous balloons. So you say, if that existed, and you said, okay, doesn't seem like something Scoots just made up at the beginning of a sleep podcast when he was supposed to be describing the sleep podcast and getting to the point, and then he didn't. I'd say, well, those balloons are there for the party and post-party, and maybe some of them fly off to the big balloon place in the sky where they get to dissipate their joy into the atmosphere for everyone to enjoy. And also, our balloons are biodegradable. Joyous balloons. They're joy for everyone. Don't tell the kids this because when they say biodegradable, we mean edible for our forest friends, not for human consumption. Joyous balloons. Please don't consume our balloons. They're for joy. And balloon, they're only for looking at or maybe tying around a wrist. But after the balloon deflates, that's what this podcast is like. It's got a little bit of joy left in it, but mostly. So hopefully there's a little joy in this podcast. That took me 8 minutes or something to say that. Okay, but I'm going to send my voice across the deep dark night, lulling, soothing, creaky dulcet tones and pointless meanders and superfluous tangents, all of which you just witnessed, to keep you company while you fall asleep. This is a podcast. If you're new, I'm glad you're here, and I really hope we can help. This is a podcast you don't really listen to. You just kind of barely pay attention. Like when you're looking at a balloon, you say, oh, okay, interesting. Anyway, next, you say, are you the monarch who likes viewing balloons? Say, oh, that was my favorite children's book. I guess we know what tonight's episode's going to be about. So I won't go on any more tangents about that. But so this is a podcast you just barely pay attention to. It's more background noise or to keep you company. It also doesn't put you to sleep. It's here to be here while you fall asleep. That's why the show episodes are over an hour, to give you plenty of time to drift off. So that you can fall asleep like whenever you want. So it's a podcast. It's a little bit different. It's a podcast you don't really listen to. It doesn't really put you to sleep. It has creaky, dulcet tones and pointless meanders. And structurally, it's also very different. Show starts off with a greeting, friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, so you feel welcome and seen. That's probably the most important part of the podcast, to be honest with you, because that's what it is about a safe place. I'm here for you to keep you company. So then there's listener support and show support. So the podcast can be here twice a week on the regular for free. Then after that is the intro. The intro is around, right now I'm shooting for 10 to 12 minutes for the intro part, just as an experiment. And the intro is a show within a show that eases you into bedtime. It kind of explains what the podcast is to new listeners, kind of gives an example, but gives you a little bit chance to wind down before we get to the bedtime story that's here to put you to sleep. Now, some listeners fall asleep right away. Some listeners, like 3% of listeners, skip the intro. But most listeners use it as a way to have some distance and to get into their bedtime mode. This is part of your bedtime routine or your wind down routine. So you could be doing something else or getting ready for bed or in bed, getting comfortable, slowly drifting off. That's the idea of this sleep with me, is that you're slowly drifting off. If you fall asleep fast, all the better. So there's an intro, and yeah, I say, well, you're explaining everything for like 18 minutes, and it never makes any sense. And I say, exactly. One day you'll get so used to it, you won't even listen at all. You'll just fall. You'll say, was he talking about? Did he invent another business to go with Tubetown and Towson's grocery store? Scoot's he has three things. He almost has his own. One day he will have couldn't call it a theme park, but so that's the intro. Then there's business again. That's what keeps the show free for everybody. That's my favorite part, because I say some people, they just want to listen for free. They don't want to have to sign up and go through a certain company or another company. So I don't know. I like that. Then there'll be our story. It was going to be something, but obviously we're going to have to talk about this monarch and the balloons now. Because how could we turn our back on the joyous balloons? Plus business opportunity for me, imaginary one at least. So that'll be a bedtime story, usually around 50 minutes of bedtime story. That's 50, and then some thank yous at the end. So all told, the episodes are over an hour. And the biggest thing is this podcast takes some getting used to. So most regular listeners, and that's like hundreds of thousands of people have told me, didn't like you at first. Took 2 or 3 tries to realize not to pay attention to you at all. And I said, you get me. I love it. It's like we've known each other for 100 years. And they say the first time listening, it felt like 100 years. And I say, yeah. So most listeners say, give it 2 or 3 tries because the show is very different. I make the show because you deserve a good night's sleep. And because I've been there tossing and turning. But I really believe you get a good night's sleep, your world's going to be better. My world's going to be better. And I know how it feels on the other side, like 4:30 this morning. I know how it feels. So if I can help it, it's my honor. I really appreciate you coming by and checking out the show. I really work hard. I yearn and I strive, and I really hope I can help you fall asleep. Thanks again for coming by. And here's a few ways I'm able to be here for you free twice a week. All right, everybody, it's time to talk about tonight's sponsor, Uncommon Goods. Uncommon Goods makes your holiday shopping stress-free and joyful with thousands of one-of-a-kind gifts you can't find anywhere else. I love doing gift shopping on Uncommon Goods. I did a little bit of Scoots just moved, so let's get some gifts for Scoots himself. Gift shopping to prepare for this ad read, because Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high-quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, and because they're made in small batches, the best can sell out fast. Now, I got a few gifts for myself, but these were great. Like, I would have gifted these to other people. I got a little bit of a bed organizer that you put under your mattress, then it hangs on the side of your bed. I could put my reading device there, my phone there, and it's a beautiful print. It's also nice. It just feels good. It looks good. It feels good. I got some autumnal movie-related scratch-off, a list of the 100 best autumnal movies that are going to surprise you with joy for the autumnal season. And then the same thing, but bingo. So 8 people, we could play bingo and watch an autumnal-themed movie and play bingo. What could be more fun than that? I love getting games on Uncommon Goods because they always have unique stuff. There's so many gift ideas on there. Many of the handcrafted products are prepared in small small batches. So shop now before they sell out this holiday season. Get it slow holidays. Or is it easy holidays? I think it's called slow holidays. It's like you take it easy. Yeah, do a little bit every week. So shop early, have fun, and cross some names off your list today. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/sleep. That's uncommongoods.com/sleep for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary. Thanks, everybody. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the second time you get to hear me say that. Welcome. Because this episode is constructed from an intro from the past and our Read With Me episodes here. It's a Frankie and Victor episode with our friend Frank and his, so I'm reading from the book Victor and Frankie, also known as a famous Mary Shelley novel. And this is a little bit different than episodes we've done with Sleep With Me, but we tested this out on Sleep With Me Plus. It was so popular, we wanted to bring it to everyone. So it's me reading through a book, also paraphrasing, making stuff sleepy, but it's not perfectly sleepy. I mean, just like everything else we make, you know. It exists within this world, but it's pretty chill. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, more of Victor and Frankie. Thanks, everybody. Chapter 12. This is still Frankie speaking. I lay on my straw, but I could not sleep. I thought of the occurrences of the day. What chiefly struck me was the gentle manners of these people, and I longed to join them, but dared not. I remembered too well the treatment I had suffered the night before in that other village, and resolved, whatever course of conduct I might hereafter think it right to pursue, that for the present I would remain quietly in my hovel, watching and endeavoring to discover the motives which influenced their actions. The cottagers arose the next morning before the sun. The young woman arranged the cottage and prepared the food, and the youth departed after the first meal. This day was passed in the same routine that which preceded it. The young man was constantly employed out of doors, and the girl in various laborious occupations within. The old man, with whom I soon perceived to be not able to see everything, employed his leisure hours on his instrument or in contemplation. Nothing could exceed the love and respect which the younger cottagers exhibited towards their venerable companion. They performed towards him every little office of affection and duty with gentleness, and he rewarded them by his benevolent smiles. They were not entirely happy. The young man and his companion often went apart and appeared to weep. I saw no cause for their unhappiness, but I was deeply affected by it. If such lovely creatures were miserable, it was less strange that I, an imperfect and solitary being, should be wretched. Yet why were these gentle beings unhappy? They possessed a delightful house, for such it was in my eyes, in every luxury. They had a fire to warm them when chill, and delicious viands when hungry. They were dressed in excellent clothes, and still more, they enjoyed one another's company and speech, interchanging each day looks of affection and kindness. What did their tears imply? Did they really express frowny faces? I was first unable to solve these questions, but perpetual attention and time explained to me many appearances were at first enigmatic. A considerable period elapsed before I discovered one of the causes of the uneasiness of this amiable family. It was poverty, and they suffered it in a distressing degree. You know, all they had to eat were vegetables from the garden and the milk of one cow, which gave very little during the winter, when they could hardly procure food to support the cow, they often, I believe, suffered the pangs in their tummy-tum-tums, which very poignantly, especially the younger two cottagers. For several times they placed food before the older gentlemen when they reserved none for themselves. This trait of kindness moved me sensibly. I had been accustomed, during the night, to borrow some of their food for myself. But when I saw that by doing this, it impacted them, the cottagers, I abstained and satisfied myself with berries, nuts, and roots, which I gathered from a neighboring wood. I discovered also another means through which I was enabled to assist their labors. I found that the youth spent a great part of each day collecting wood for the family fire, and during the night I often took his tools, the use of which I quickly discovered, and brought home wood sufficient for the consumption of several days. I remember the first time I did this, a young woman, when she opened the door in the morning, appeared greatly astonished on seeing a great pile of wood on the outside. She uttered some words in a loud voice, and the other youth joined her, who also expressed surprise. I observed with pleasure that he did not go into the forest that day, but spent it repairing the cottage and cultivating the garden. By degrees, I made a discovery of still greater moment. I found these people possessed a method of communicating their experience and feelings to one another by articulate sounds. I perceived that the words they spoke sometimes produced smiles or frowns, or tears in the minds and countenance of the hearers. This was indeed a godlike science, and I ardently desired to become acquainted with it. But I was baffled in every attempt I made for this purpose. Their pronunciation was quick, and the words they uttered, not having any apparent connection with visible objects, I was unable to discover any clue by which I could unravel the mystery of their reference. By great application, however, and after having remained during the space of several revolutions of the moon in my hovel, oh, the moon in my hovel, how I loved that moon in my hovel. But I discovered the names that were given to some of the most familiar objects of discourse. I learned and applied the words milk, bread, and wood. I learned also the names of the cottagers themselves. The youth and his companion had each of them several names, but the old man had only one, which was Father. The girl was called Sister or Agatha, and the youth Felix, brother or son. I cannot describe the delight I felt when I learned the ideas appropriated to each of these sounds and was able to pronounce them. I distinguished several other words without being able as yet to understand or apply them, such as good, dearest, Scooter, frowny face. I spent the winter in this manner. The gentle manners and beauty of the cottagers greatly endeared them to me. When they were unhappy, I frowned. When they rejoiced, I sympathized in their joys. I saw few human beings beside them, and if any other happened to enter the cottage, their harsh manner and rude gait only enhanced to me the superior accomplishments of my friends. The old man, I could perceive, also endeavored to encourage his children, as sometimes I found that he called them to cast off their melancholy. He would talk in a cheerful accent, with an expression of goodness that bestowed pleasure even upon me. Agatha listened with respect, her eyes sometimes filled with tears, which she endeavored to wipe away unperceived. But generally, I found that her countenance and tone were more cheerful after having listened to the exhortations of her father. It was not thus with Felix. He was always the saddest of the group, and even to my unpracticed sentences, he appeared more frowny than his friends. But if his countenance was more frowny, his voice was more cheerful than that of his sister, especially when he addressed the older man. I could mention innumerable instances which, although slight, marked the dispositions of these amiable cottagers. In the midst of poverty and want, Felix carried with pleasure his sister the very little white flower that peeped out from beneath the snowy ground. Early in the morning, before she had risen, he cleared away the snow that obstructed her path to the milk house, drew water from the well, and brought wood from the outhouse, where, to his perpetual astonishment, he found his store always replenished by an invisible hand. In the day, I believe, he worked sometimes for a neighboring farmer, because he often went forth and did not return till dinner, yet brought no wood with him. At other times he worked in the garden, but as there was little to do in the frosty season, he read to the old man and Agatha. The reading had puzzled me extremely at first, but by degrees I discovered that he uttered many of the same sounds when he read as when he talked. I conjectured, therefore, that he found on the paper for signs for speech which he understood, and I ardently longed to comprehend these also. But how was that possible when I did not even understand the sounds for which they stood as signs? I improved, however, sensibly in this science, but not sufficiently to follow up any kind of conversation, although I applied my whole mind to the endeavor. For I easily perceived that although I eagerly longed to discover myself to the cottagers, I ought not to make an attempt until I first learned the language, which knowledge might enable me to make them overlook the fact that I was a plant-based being. You know, the figure I have. For with this also the contrast perpetually presented to my eyes had made me acquainted. You know, you would say I'd crack mirrors, Victor. You know, I admired the perfect forms of my cottagers, their grace, their beauty, delicate complexions, and then I would see myself in the transparent pool, looking nothing like them, a little bit like them and a little bit like the trees and the logs and the bogs. At first, I just stared back, unable to believe that I was indeed who was reflected in the mirror. And when I became fully convinced that I was in reality, different, shall we say, I was filled with the bitterest sensations of despondence and mortification. Alas, I did not yet entirely know the woe that I would know. Oh, the woe I would know. As the sun became warmer and the light of the day longer, the snow vanished, and I beheld the bare trees and the earth. From this time Felix was more employed, and the heart-moving indications of not having enough slowly disappeared. Their food, as I found afterwards, was coarse but wholesome, and they procured a sufficiency of it. Several new kinds of plants sprang up in the garden, which they dressed, and these signs of comfort increased daily as the season advanced. The old man, leaning on his son, walked each day at noon when it did not rain, as I found it was called when the heavens poured forth its waters. This frequently took place, but a high wind quickly dried the earth, and this season became far more pleasant than it had been. Now, my mode of life in my hovel was uniform. During the morning I attended the motions of the cottagers, and when they dispersed in various occupations I slept, and the remainder of the day was spent observing my friends. When they retired to rest, if there was any moon, or the night was starlit, I went into the woods and collected my own food and fuel for the cottage. When I returned, as often as it was necessary, I cleared their path from the snow and performed those offices I had seen done by Felix. I afterwards found that these labors, performed by an invisible hand, greatly astonished them, and once or twice I heard them on these occasions utter the words, "Good Spirit," "Wonderful," but I did not understand the signification of these terms. My thoughts now became more active, and I longed to discover the motives and feelings of these lovely creatures. I was so inquisitive to know why Felix appeared so frowny-faced, and Agatha so quick to tears. I thought, so foolishly, as my woe will suit you will so know my woe. But I thought that it might be possible, that it might be in my power to restore happiness to these deserving people. When I slept or was absent or not around, the forms of the venerable father, the gentle Agatha, and the excellent Felix flitted before me. I looked upon them as superior beings who would be the arbiters of my future destiny. I formed in my imagination 1,000 pictures of presenting myself to them in their reception of me. I imagined, that they'd frown at first, but my gentle demeanor and conciliating words, I should win their favor and afterwards their love. These thoughts exhilarated me and led me to apply with fresh ardor acquiring the art of language. My speaking was indeed harsh but supple, and although my voice was very unlike the soft music of their tones, it was more of a swampy dulcet. I had swampy dulcet tones, or boggy dulcet tones at the time. But I pronounced such words as I understood with tolerable ease. It was as the rear end and the lapdog, yet surely that gentle donkey whose intentions were affectionate, although his manners were rude, deserved better. The pleasant showers and genial warmth of spring greatly altered the aspects of the earth. People who before this change had been hiding out in caves and dispersed were employed in various arts of cultivation. The birds sang in more cheerful notes, and leaves began to bud forth on the trees. Happy, happy earth. I guess I felt less of a bond with it at the time. I'd more bonded with my cottagers, but I felt happy for the earth as I did for my cottagers. Fit habitation for gods, which so short a time before was bleak, damp, and unwholesome. My spirits were elevated by the enchanting appearance of nature. Maybe this was a sign I could win them over. Maybe it was my spring, too. The past was blotted from my memory, just like the memory of the winter. The present was tranquil, and the future gilded by bright rays of hope and the anticipations of joy. Chapter 13. I now hasten to the more moving part of my story. I shall relate the events that impressed me with feelings which, from what I had been, have made me what I am. Spring advanced rapidly. The weather became fine and the skies cloudless. It surprised me that what was before a desert and gloomy should now bloom with the most beautiful flowers and blooms. My senses were gratified and refreshed by 1,000 scents of delights and 1,000 sights of beauty. It was on one of these days when my cottagers periodically rested from labor. The old man played on his guitar, and the children listened to him. And there I observed the countenance of Felix was melancholy beyond expression. He sighed frequently, and once his father paused in his music, and I conjectured by his manner that he inquired the cause of his son's sorrow. Felix replied in a cheerful accent, but the old man was recommencing his music when someone tapped at the door. It was a lady on horseback, accompanied by a country man as a guide. The lady was dressed in a dark suit and covered by a veil. Agatha asked a question, to which the stranger only replied, pronouncing in a sweet accent the name of Felix. Her voice was musical, but unlike that of either of my friends. On hearing this word, Felix came hastily to the lady, who, when she saw them, threw up her veil, and I beheld a countenance of angelic beauty and expression, her hair of a shining raven black and curiously braided, her eyes dark but gentle, although animated, her features of a regular proportion, and her complexion wondrously fair, each cheek tinged with a lovely pink. Felix seemed ravished with delight when he saw her. Every trait of sorrow vanished from his face, and it instantly expressed a degree of ecstatic joy which I could hardly believe capable. His eyes sparkled as his cheek flushed with pleasure, and at that moment I thought him as beautiful as the stranger. She appeared affected by different feelings. Wiping a few tears from her lovely eyes, she held out her hand to Felix, who kissed it rapturously, and called her, as well as I could distinguish, his sweet, sweet sweetie pie. She did not appear to understand him, but smiled. He assisted her to dismount, and dismissing her guide, conducted her into the cottage. Some conversation took place between him and his father, and the young stranger knelt at the old man's feet and would have kissed his hand, but he raised her and embraced her affectionately. I soon perceived that although the stranger had articulate sounds and appeared to have a language of her own, she was neither understood nor herself understanding the cottagers. They made many signs which I did not comprehend, but I saw her presence diffused gladness through the cottage, dispelling their sorrows as the sun dissipates morning mists. Felix seemed peculiarly happy, and with smiles of delight welcomed his sweet, sweet sweetie. Agatha, the ever gentle Agatha, kissed the hands of the lovely stranger, and pointing to her brother, made signs which appeared to me to mean that he had been sorrowful until she came. Some hours passed thus, while they, by their countenances, expressed joy, the cause of which I did not comprehend. Presently I found, by the frequent recurrence of some sound which the stranger repeated after them, that she was endeavoring to learn their language, and the idea instantly occurred to me that I should make use of the same instructions to the same end. The stranger learned about 20 words at the first lesson. Most of them, indeed, were those I had before understood, but I profited by the others. As the night came on, Agatha and the sweet, sweet sweetie retired early. When they separated, Felix kissed the hand of the stranger and said, "Good night, sweet Safie." He sat up much longer, conversing with his father, and by the frequent repetition of her name, I conjectured that their lovely guest was the subject of their conversation. I ardently desired to understand them, and bent every faculty towards that purpose, but I found it utterly impossible. The next morning, Felix went out to his work, and after the usual occupations of Agatha were finished, sweet, sweet sweetie sat at the feet of the old man, taking up his guitar, and played some airs so entrancingly beautiful, they at once drew tears of sorrow and delight from my eyes. She sang, and her voice flowed in a rich cadence, swelling or dying away like a nightingale of the woods. When she had finished, she gave the guitar to Agatha, who at first declined it. She played a simple air, and her voice accompanied it in sweet accents. But unlike the wondrous strain of the stranger, the old man appeared enraptured and said some words which Agatha endeavored to explain to sweet, sweet sweetie, and by which he appeared to wish to express that she bestowed upon him the greatest delight by her music. The days now passed as peaceably as before, and with the sole alteration that joy had taken place of the sadness of the countenances of my friends. Sweet, sweet sweetie was always in a good mood. She and I improved rapidly in our knowledge of the language, so that in 2 months I began to comprehend most of the words uttered by my protectors. In the meanwhile, the ground was covered with herbage, and the green banks interspersed with innumerable flowers, sweet to the scent and to the eyes, stars of pale radiance among the moonlight woods. The sun became warmer, the nights clear and balmy, and my nocturnal rambles were an extreme pleasure to me, although they were considerably shortened by the late setting and early rising of the sun, for I never ventured abroad during daylight, fearful of a meeting and the same treatment I had formerly endured in the first village I had entered. My days were spent in close attention, that I might more speedily master their language, and I may boast that I improved more rapidly than sweet Sweetie, who understood very little and conversed in broken words, whilst I could comprehend and imitate almost every word that was spoken. While I improved in speech, I also learned the science of letters as it was taught to the stranger, and this opened before me a whole field for wonder and delight. The book which Felix instructed sweet Sweetie was Volney's Ruins of Empires. I should not have understood the purport of this book had not Felix, in reading it, had given very minute explanations. He had chosen this work, he said, because the declamatory style was famed in imitation of Eastern authors. Through this work I obtained a cursory knowledge of the history and a view of several empires at the present existing in the world, and it gave me an insight into the manners of the governments and the religions of the different nations of the earth. I heard a lot about a lot of different stuff. I don't know, at the time I took it like it was the only way. I heard about ups and downs and know-it-all, discoveries, not good things sometimes too. But these wonderful narrations inspired with me warm, strange feelings. We're humans, indeed, at once so powerful, so virtuous and magnificent, yet so causing of frowny faces everywhere. Humans appeared at one time a mere scion of not goodness, and at the other, all that can be conceived of as noble and godlike. To be a great and virtuous person appeared to be the highest honor that can befall a sensitive being, but to be selfish and self-seeking, as many on record had been, appeared to be a low point, not a sweet Sweetie, a condition more abject than that of the blind mole or the worm in the dirt. For a long time, I could not conceive how one person could make so many tears flow and frowny faces frown. I didn't understand why there were laws or governments. But when I heard about vices, my wonder ceased and I turned away. I was kind of grossed out by it. Every conversation of the cottagers now opened up new wonders to me. While I listened to the instructions which Felix bestowed upon sweet Sweetie, the strange system of human society was explained to me. I heard about the division of property and labor, of wealth in the hands of few, the people not really having nothing, and then the idea of nobility, of rank, of class. These words induced me to turn towards myself. I learned that the possessions most esteemed by your fellow creatures were high and unsullied. They were to have the cash, the gold, the bling. A person might be respected with only one of them, but without any of them, they were, except in rare circumstances, they were there to help the other people get more. Blew my mind, particularly my mind at that time, because who was I? What was I? Of my creation and my creator, I was absolutely ignorant. But I knew I possessed no money, no friends, no kind of property. I was, besides, endued with a figure, plant-like, root-like, leaf-like, a leaf-based being, a plant-based being, but composting leaves. Could say I was a leaf heap, if you were being nice about it, too. Maybe I wasn't even the same as these humans. I was more agile than they, and I could subsist upon a coarser diet. Pretty sure I had phylum and cambium, and they didn't, too. Pretty sure our photosynthesis helped me out, but I didn't see any photosynthesis going on with them. Didn't know what photosynthesis was at the time, though. But I had a general concept of it. I didn't have the words. You know why? Because I bore the extremes of heat and cold. Didn't bother my frame quite so much. My stature far exceeded theirs. When I looked around, I saw and heard nothing like me. Was I, then, a blot upon the earth, which everyone fled from, which you all turned their backs to. And I'm saying this as a narrator, Victor, but I cannot describe to you how it felt that these reflections, what they turned inside me. I tried to dispel them, but my sorrow only increased with knowledge. Oh, that I had forever this is where my woe, this is the height of my woe. Well, it's not even the height of my woe, but it's woe time, and not the Joey Lawrence woe from the future. That's actually the past, dear Victor. W-O-E, woe. Woe that I had remained forever in my woods, or that I had never felt beyond the sensations of hunger, thirst, and heat. Oh, what a strange nature is knowledge. It clings to the mind when it has once seized on it like lichen on a rock. I wish sometimes to shake it off, Victor. But I could not, just like the song. You don't know it, but I do. But I shouldn't know it, but I do, Victor. Shake it off. Shake off all thought, all feeling. But I learned that there was but one means to overcome these sensations, and that was a transferring of realms, a state which I did not yet understand. I admired virtue and good feelings and loved the gentle manners and amiable qualities of my cottagers, but I was shut out from them, except through means which I obtained by stealth when I was unseen and unknown, and which rather increased than satisfied the desire I had becoming one among my fellows. The gentle words of Agatha, the animated smiles of sweet sweetie, the charm, they were not for me. The mild exhortations of the old man and the lively conversations of the loved Felix were not for me. M-I-S-E-R-Y. My woe, unhappy wretch. Other lessons were impressed upon me, even more deeply. I heard of the difference between, I learned more differences in things, of growth and birth, of infancy, of toddlerhood, of the terrible twos in the tremendous threes. I heard this discussed, how the lives and the cares of the parents were wrapped up in the precious charge, how the mind of the youth expanded and gained knowledge of brother, sister, and all the various relationships that bind one human being to another in mutual bonds. But where were my friends and my relations? No father watched my infant days. No mother blessed me with smiles and caresses, leaf-based or other, plant-based or other, compost-based or other. If they had, all my past life was forgotten, a blot, a blind vacancy in which I distinguished nothing. From my earliest remembrance, I had been as then I was in height and proportion. I had yet never seen a being resembling me or compared to me, nothing like me. This wasn't terminal uniqueness, Victor. This was uniqueness. Who was I? What was I? The question again recurred, only to be answered with groans of woe. I will soon explain to what these feelings tended, but allow me now to return to the cottagers, whose story excited in me such various feelings of indignation, delight, and wonder, but which all terminated in additional love and reverence for my protectors, for so I loved, in an innocent, half-painful self-deceit to call them. Chapter 14. Some time elapsed before I learned the history of my friends. It was one which could not fail to impress itself deeply on my mind, unfolding as it did a number of circumstances, each interesting and wonderful to one so utterly inexperienced as I was. The name of the old man was De Lacy, He was descended from a good family in France where he had lived for a number of years in affluence, respected by his superiors and beloved by his equals. His son was bred in the service of his country, and Agatha had ranked with the ladies of highest distinction. A few months before my arrival, they had lived in a large and luxurious city called Paris. I know, dear Victor, is Paris, but I was pretending. That's what I said, Paris, but they knew they said Paris. But some say Paris. Surrounded by friends they were, and possessed of every enjoyment which virtue, refinement of intellect, or taste, accompanied by a moderate fortune, could afford. The father of Sweet Sweetie, Safie, had been the cause of this not-so-great situation. He was a merchant and had inhabited Paris for many years, when for some reason which I could not learn, he became he liked to make speeches on things like soapboxes. He took on a strong viewpoint, and it was not friendly to the governing groups. And on the very day Sweet Sweetie was there to arrive to join him in Paris, he was told, you need a time out, a long time out. As a matter of fact, they said, we're going to give you time out in another realm. And he said, but my Sweet Sweetie just arrived. I was just on a soapbox. I don't that's just my imagining what he said. And it didn't seem fair at all. And all of Paris was indignant. And it was judged that because he was a merchant, because he had a lot of money, because of who he was, where he was from, that was why they judged him, and not for what he did, for just making speeches, and having a strong viewpoint. Felix accidentally, apparently, was present at the trial. And he was indignant, too, and he couldn't believe his eyes, he couldn't believe his ears, couldn't believe his nose, even. And when he heard what was decided, he had made at that moment a solemn vow to deliver him, and looked around for the means. A little trickery for the father of Sweet Sweetie. But, Felix, this wasn't a skill of his, so many fruitless attempts he made to gain admittance. They said, well, if you're going to give him a timeout while you prepare for his longer timeout, I'm going to get him out of there. And he even found a strongly grated window in a quiet part of the building, which he got into, and, his what could have been his future father-in-law was super frowny-faced. And Felix visited the grate at night and spoke through it, kind of like a tin can phone, and made his intentions known. The father, amazed and delighted, endeavored to kindle the zeal of his deliverer by promises of reward and wealth. Felix was not interested. At first, this was just Felix, by the way, acting on his own thoughts and feelings and conscience. Felix said, I'm not interested in those offers, man. But then he laid eyes on Sweet Sweetie, who was visiting her father, and who by her gestures expressed her lively gratitude. And, Felix he had already made the commitment, so this wasn't why he committed to helping the father. But he said, holy cow, I'll look extra heroic here if I take on this toil and hazard. And the father quickly perceived the impression that his daughter had made on the heart of Felix, and endeavored to secure in him more entirely, and said, hey, why don't you two get together? Let's get me away from here. Convey me out of here, ASAP. And then you and my daughter maybe wed, but Felix too delicate to accept this offer. But he looked forward to the idea, as a matter of fact, as the consummation of his happiness. Now, during the ensuing days, when the preparations were going forward, Felix was making his plans to make a quick getaway. The zeal of Felix was warmed by several letters he received from sweet Sweetie, who found means to express in her thoughts in the language, to Felix, with the aid of someone else, a servant of her father who understood French. She thanked him in the most ardent terms for his intended services towards her parents, and at the same time she gently deplored her own fate. I have copies of these letters, for I found means during my residence in my hovel to procure the implements of writing, and the letters were often in the hands of Felix or Agatha. Before I depart, I'll give these letters to you. They will prove the truth of my tale. I wouldn't just be carrying around copied letters between two people in love in a tough circumstance, or a brother and a sister and stuff. I'm a tree-based being, right? Why would I be carrying around copies of letters? So it should prove my tale. But at present, as the sun is already far declined, I shall only have time to repeat the substance of them to you. Now, Sweetie related that her mother, she wasn't in great circumstances at all, but her and her father had fallen in love, and then, the daughter was very enthusiastic then, talking about her mother and her father together. The mother had taught the daughter and taught her to aspire to higher powers of intellect and independence of spirit. But her mother eventually headed to another plane of existence. But her lessons were indelibly impressed on the mind of Sweetie, who never wanted to return to the home of her mother again. And she allowed only to occupy herself. She wouldn't be able to pursue those things. And she found that ill-suited to the temper of her soul, now accustomed to grand ideas and a noble emulation for virtue. So the prospect of marrying somebody as nice as Felix, and maybe even heroic, and living in a place where she could pursue her dreams as well, was enchanting to her. Eventually they set the date for the time out to another realm for the father. But on the night previous to it, he was gone, and before morning he was distant many leagues from Paris. Felix had procured passports in the name of his father, sister, and himself. He had previously communicated his plan to the former, who aided the deceit by quitting his house under the pretense of a journey and concealed himself with his daughter in an obscure part of Paris. Felix conducted the father and daughter through France to Lyon, across Mont Cenis to Leghorn, where the father decided to wait for a favorable opportunity, passing into some part of his former home. Now, Sweetie resolved to remain with her father until the moment of his departure, before which time the father renewed his promise that she should be united with his deliverer, and Felix remained with them in expectation of that event. In the meantime, he enjoyed the society of the father, who exhibited towards him the simplest and tenderest affection. They conversed with one another through means of an interpreter, and sometimes with interpretation of looks. And Sweetie sang to him the divine airs from her past places of living. The father allowed this intimacy to take place and encouraged the hope of the youthful lovers, while in his heart he had formed far other plans. In his heart he loathed this idea that her father should be united with someone with Felix, but he didn't want Felix to detect the resentment he had if he should appear lukewarm, for he knew he was still, he was the one who got him here. He could tell on him. And the Italians, where they were, would call the French, and it would be all trouble, trouble, trouble. He resolved by 1,000 plans a way he should be enabled to prolong the deceit until it might no longer be necessary, and to secretly take his daughter with him when he departed. His plans were facilitated by the news that arrived from Paris, because the government of France, they were not happy. You could say they were greatly steaming at the escape of the father, and they spared no expense to detect and find who did it. And because this wasn't really Felix's game, the plot of Felix was quickly discovered, and DeLacy and Agatha got busted. B-U-S-T-E-D. They got timeouts. The news reached Felix and roused him from his dream of pleasure. His father, without sight and getting older, and his gentle sister lay in a noisome place while he enjoyed free air and society with the woman he loved. This idea made him very unhappy. He quickly arranged with the father that if the latter should find a favorable opportunity to get out of there before Felix got back to Italy, Sweet Sweetie could remain as a boarder at a convent at Leghorn, and then, quitting the lovely Sweet Sweetie and her papa, he hastened to Paris and delivered himself up and said, "Yeah, it's me. I'm here to make amends." He was hoping he would free DeLacy and Agatha by this proceeding. He did not succeed. They had a timeout 5 months before the official time to judge the timeout even started. And the result of this cost them everything. And by the way, then they got exiled from France. And this is where they found themselves in misery at a cottage in Germany where I discovered them. Felix soon learned that the father, for whom him and his family endured so much, on discovering that Felix had no more money and no more home other than a cottage in Germany, he gave up the good feeling and honor and left Italy with his daughter, sent Felix a pittance of money to aid him, and said, maybe someday in the future we'll work on maintenance together. Such were the events that preyed on the heart of Felix and rendered him, when I first saw him, the most frowny-faced of his family. He could have endured poverty, while this distress had been the meed of his virtue. He gloried in it, but the ingratitude of the father and the loss of his Sweet Sweetie were misfortunes more bitter and irreparable. But now the arrival of Sweet Sweetie infused new life into his soul. When news reached Leghorn that Felix was deprived of his wealth and rank, the merchant commanded his daughter to think no more of Felix, but to prepare to return home. The generous nature of Sweet Sweetie was not happy at all with her father's command. She attempted to expostulate her with her father, but he left her and said, reiterating his tyrannical mandate. A few days after, the father stopped by his daughter's place and told her hastily he had reason to believe his residence at Leghorn had been leaked, and that he should speedily be delivered to the French government. He had consequently hired a vessel to convey him back home, and they would sail out of there in a few hours. Now, he was going to leave his daughter under the care of a confidential servant to follow at her leisure with the greater part of his property and his stuff, which had not yet arrived at Leghorn. When alone, Sweetie resolved in her own mind a plan of conduct that would allow her to pursue what she cared about. Heading back home was abhorrent to her. She was averse to it, so were her feelings. By some papers of her father which fell into her hands, she heard of the exile of Felix, and learnt the name of the spot where they then resided. She hesitated some time, but at length she formed her determination. Taking with her some jewels that belonged to her and a sum of money, she quitted Italy with an attendant, a friend from Leghorn, but who understood the common language, and they departed for Germany. She arrived safely at a town 20 leagues from the cottage of DeLacy, but that was when her friend fell under the weather. Sweet, sweet sweetie nursed her with the most devoted affection, but her friend said, I'm going to go to the other realm. I'm so under the weather, where the weather's always better. And sweet, sweet sweetie was there alone, unacquainted with the language and ignorant of the customs of this world. She fell, however, into good hands, for she had heard her friend told her where they were going, and after her friend left, sweet, sweet sweetie somehow arrived in safety at the cottage of her lover. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots, and this is a Tuck You In message. I don't know if you've been listening to episode after episode, or you just woke up, you're drifting in and out, but this is also a reminder the show is always here for you, as it has been since 2013. But I need to talk, just you and me. We got to talk for a minute if you're listening to me and hearing me right now. And you might have heard me talking about this before, but I do want to spell this out, that Sleep With Me, all of the funding to make Sleep With Me, everything that pays all of our bills and the costs of producing the show, 99% of that comes from listeners. We don't get any funding from outside sources or other entertainment companies or companies, companies like music streaming companies or video streaming companies. We don't have any investors, and there's no other secret pipeline of support for Sleep With Me or almost every other podcast either. We get some money from sponsors that are direct response, meaning they base their sponsorship on the listeners that support them. A tiny bit from automated ads. But the majority of what keeps the show going comes from the people who get the most out of the podcast. Super listeners, ideally. And I don't know if you're a super listener. I don't know if you already made the decision you're not in a position to support the show. That's okay. Or you made the decision you're not going to support the show. That's okay, too. You could still take a part in this coming right up here. But if you didn't make one of those two decisions, we need support. Support from the people who benefit the most from the podcast. People that fall asleep fast. People that listen all night long. If we don't get more all-night listeners and people who fall asleep fast, the podcast won't be around. But we also need support from people that listen 3-4 nights a week. People who have listened for a year or longer. And I'm just wondering if you're in one of those groups. The podcast has changed your life for the better, and it continues to change your life for the better. And I'm trying to lay out the stakes without using kind of fear or stress, because while that is effective, right? The last round this month, I tried to use a more positive message, and we actually lost subscribers. But it's so tiring for me. It's almost like I'd rather lose the podcast than kind of keep having to do this sales pitch and say, well, if the podcast is going to go away, if that's the only way to get people to support the show, I don't know, it's really, really not fun for me. So instead of, the stakes are there. If you haven't decided and the podcast has changed your life for the better, the stakes are, we need some of you, maybe it's you, to support the show, or it won't be around. But instead of focusing on that, I want to talk about rooting, about sending positive energy, rooting in the deep dark night. I've been talking about this in the intro for years. And that's what I believe in. I believe in rooting for other people to get a good night's sleep. And maybe you're here, maybe you stuck around because someone out there, somebody who was struggling in the deep dark night just like you, was rooting for you. And you could feel that welcome when you got here. Or maybe you're one of those people who roots for other people who are struggling in the deep dark night. And here's what a couple people who did sign up in the last round of messaging said. Tiffany Y said, just because you can get something for free doesn't mean you should. I know if I have trouble for sleeping, I just have to listen. I'll be out in no time. That is definitely worth a few dollars a month. And Michelle F. said, this show is like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia and a sleep aid all in one. I also consider it an art form, and I believe in compensating artists for their work. Timothy T. said, I'm a full-time caregiver, and the person I care for discovered your podcast, and we really like the ad-free content. It makes it easier to listen to. And then John R., who said, I'm a super listener, said, I had no idea how urgent it was. I'd been meaning to support the show, but I just never took the time. I realize now I've been unintentionally voting now. So I subscribed and with feeling. So what I'm asking is, are you the one person everybody else is rooting for? Like, just to overcome whatever it is, putting it off or saying it doesn't matter, it matters, or somebody else is going to do it, or are you the person we're rooting for to support the show? Now, it's okay if you're not. Maybe you're rooting for yourself to get a good night's sleep as soon as this episode, maybe you're an all-night listener. Maybe you woke up and you're looking forward to falling asleep soon. If you are a super listener, we did build Sleep With Me Plus with you in mind, ad-free episodes, ad-free story-only episodes, tons of different cool stuff. So I don't know if you're rooting for yourself, think about supporting the show on Sleep With Me Plus just so you get a better listening experience. But maybe you're rooting for somebody else out there. Maybe it's somebody this month, which we're rooting for, is people going back to school or who are impacted by the back-to-school season. It could be teachers, it could be parents, it could be students, it could be anybody dealing with increased traffic. Whatever it is, this beginning of this transitional season affects a lot of people, and we're rooting for all those people, whether they listen to the show or not, or whether they're a super listener or a cat. They say, well, I just needed to get through the first couple weeks of school. We're rooting for all of them to get a good night's sleep. So you could root for those people. You could root for someone whose sleep struggles are just like yours, or you could receive the rooting, because I hope you can feel it right now. I'm rooting for you, but a bunch of other people are rooting for you right now across the world. But if you're the one we're rooting for that's like, yeah, I've been putting it off. Yes, Sleep With Me continues to change my life for the better. We're rooting for you to support the show. So they'll be around, not just for you, for every other person we're rooting for. You could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus, because we need support, right? And you might be thinking someone else will do it. But what if, as has been said in the last couple months, time after time, what if that someone else is you, right? You're the someone else. Well, if you're that person, we're cheering you on here. Don't let that resistance, and I know what the resistance feels like. I put it off. I say it doesn't matter. I say I'll do it tomorrow. Then I criticize myself. But just do it and see how it feels. And again, you could always cancel during the free trial or cancel after a month or two. But I'm so proud of the show. And this is how I want to try to get support for the show. If it doesn't work, I don't know what I'll do. But I'm going to keep trying this more positive but honest message where everybody can participate. And everybody can participate in giving and receiving. But it is like kind of like a needle in a haystack that we're looking for now, but we got to find it. So I don't know if you're the needle in the haystack or you're somebody snoozing in the haystack, or maybe you're a horse having a hay snack. I don't know. But thanks so much for listening, and good night.